Welcome to Blackpill Literature. So this is an offhand episode because I don't think I'm going to finish the stuff for next week. Hopefully next week by this episode. But anyway, maybe this will be my first really editing intensive episode. Who knows? Maybe not. Next week we're looking to see Red Dragon, A Beautiful Bastard by Joe Abercrombie, and probably maybe a story from the collected stories of William Faulkner. This week, we have something different. So what do we have for this week? Well, let's go through some of let's do my top 5 favorite Blackpill novels. So, let's go 1 to 5, and I think number 1 is still going to be The Sun Also Rises, so let's just get that one out of the way anyway. But yeah, let's talk about The Sun Also Rises. So The Sun Also Rises, as I talked about last week, it's the story of a man going through the lost generation, literally what was deemed the lost generation, called it, in Paris in the 1920s, I think, or maybe 1910, something like that. And he's flowing through the city full of total degradation. Basically, it's the exact kind of culture that we have today, which is interesting because maybe it's not that culture has gotten so bad. Maybe it's just that culture has been so bad. But it does seem to be the exact kind of culture there and then that we have today. And you get to basically see Ernest Hemingway kind of maybe self-insert in some way, or at least, I don't know. I think a lot of the criticisms of these characters, going right up to his total brutal takedown line, they all seemed like such nice people. A lot of criticisms of these drunkards and frivolous, irresponsible people in Paris might be coming from Ernest Hemingway himself, because, well, I'll just say, I think it takes a discerning eye to see a lot of this shit, and I think back to this book. I read it years ago, but I think back to it, and I actually see a lot, thinking back to the word of the book, that I see in our society today. In fact, I'd say The Great Gatsby and The Sun Also Rises are sort of the perfect two-pack of these are perhaps the greatest black-pilled examinations of our culture of all time, of all maybe history. And so let's roll into number 2. So number 2 is going to be The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And boy, oh boy, is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald just about the best book ever written. And I'm actually going to look up a quote while I'm doing this, and hopefully it'll come to fruition. Yeah, here we go. So this quote, this is one of the greatest quotes. This is from Goodreads that I'm reading it, so hopefully it's accurate. But this is one of the greatest quotes of all time, and this is basically The Great Gatsby in a nutshell, black-pilled and all. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made. What a great fucking line. What a great description of exactly the kind of people that our society thrives on. And you know why it thrives on it? I'll give you the Illuminati black take for you right now. Our society thrives on it because those are the exact kind of people that are easy to control. Those are the exact kind of people that they want people to be, because not only in sort of a metaphysical Mark Passio sense of, or more metaphysical kind of maybe Mark Passio sense of, you know, the more responsible people are, and maybe it's just how things work out. It doesn't have to be metaphysical, except in the sense that it might be something that happens recurringly, but the more irresponsible people are, the less freedom people have. And like the worse, the more, basically I think as morality goes down, tyranny goes up. And as morality goes up, tyranny goes down, in some sense. And so here you go. These are the perfect 2 novels to illustrate, and The Great Gatsby in this case, France on one side, and in The Great Gatsby, New York on the other. You get to see how very, very frivolous all these people are, how very, very uncaring, how very, very incredibly cold. Now, the next, let's just roll along here. Maybe we'll roll along and I'll kind of go by inspiration. But let's say number 3 is going to be House of Leaves. And then let's say number 4 is Holes, and number 5 is... Oh, yeah, well, that'll fucking do it. Okay, number 5 is that. Okay, so, House of Leaves. Now, is House of Leaves not a Blackpill novel? Basically, this book is the story of a house. It is indeed the story of a house, but it's the story of a house written in words circling around the pages, like literally like the words are, in some cases, maybe it appears that they've been taken out or something. Like you'll have lists of objects that are not in the house. As the character goes, as like the book progresses, and by the way, part of the book is actually a guy reading the book and writing things about it, Pale Fire style, Vladimir Nabokov, the guy who wrote Lolita. But in this case, Pale Fire is the book where he wrote a long poem and then he annotated it as if it was sort of somebody else annotating a poem written by somebody else. And so the whole thing was sort of a Borgesian found art piece. And this is similar to that, where the book is about this house with impossible geometry, let's say. This house where the book is actually about making a documentary about this house where there's a hallway in one of the rooms that when you look around the outside of the house, there's no hallway leading out. Like when you look around the exterior wall, there's no hallway, but the door opens out into nothing and there's a dark hallway. And the guy, he's in parts of the book, they're describing the Navidson report. That's the book that it is, and I remember it all these years later. In the Navidson report, they're describing, for example, all these items that aren't in these dark hallways that they progress further and further down, and all these winding staircases into just total darkness, and it's all totally empty, or at least a lot of it seems to be. And so there they are. These are all the items that weren't there. Refrigerator, like table, chairs, desk set, whatever. Dishwasher, they all weren't there. Laundry machine, dryer, washing machine, they weren't there in the darkness. And all the while, you have this guy who's leading a really fucked up life, and he's sort of like getting into the book as if it's like The Ring. I think this might have come out after The Ring, but I think it might have been being written before The Ring, but I don't know. Whatever the case may be as to when what came out, this guy's getting really into the book, and it's kind of like seeping into his life, like a Stephen King short story, like The Road Virus Heads North, where you have a guy who buys this creepy painting at a garage sale, and then the painting changes as he drives, and then he realizes that the painting is sort of like showing a guy who's following him and is about to fucking kill him or something, basically. That's from Stephen King's really good short story collection, Everything's Eventual. Perhaps really his maybe last super strong short story collection. I don't know. Maybe I haven't really appreciated it, because Will is good in Just After Sunset. Maybe I haven't appreciated the following ones. But in any case, there you go. House of Leaves. Fucked up guy reading this crazy book about a house full of darkness and absolute nothing. Next. We have everyone's favorite ever book as a kid, Holes by Louis Sachar. Everyone's favorite book, Holes. This book was the story of a fat kid, and they got it wrong in the movie. He wasn't Shia LaBeouf. He wasn't tall and thin. When I saw the trailer, I was like kind of horrified as a kid. I was like, but the whole book's about him being fat. Like the whole book is about him being this fat kid who is forced to go to this sort of juvenile detention center where they dig holes in the hot ground in some desert in Arizona. Something like that. I think it might be Arizona. Anyway, there are like just this... First of all, the book's written in pure poetry. I went back to read a little of it the other day, or I was sort of looking at it recently. And they were talking about the yellow-spotted lizard. And there's a whole little chapter, like a 2-page chapter, where they're like, some some people can survive falling out of a plane. Some people can survive this or that. But nobody has ever survived the bite of a yellow-spotted lizard. And basically, like, the whole book is this fat kid being forced to dig in the hot sun with a bunch of other kids. It's like they're in a little prison, being forced to dig in the hot sun. And he talks about the blisters that form on his hands and how they pop and how his hands fucking bleed, and like the ways that they deal with the sun and all these different things. And they're working for just the most disgusting, awful examples of exactly what kind of authoritarian society we have, exactly what kind of authoritarian society it is. This is. All right, and next, finally, for our final book, we have, sorry guys, but this is the final book, and I haven't read the book in a while, so I might not have much to say about it other than sort of thinking of the movie, but what is it? Henry Louis Gates Jr., Requiem for a Dream. All right, Requiem for a Dream, that's it. How does it get any more black pill than that? Requiem for a Dream, of course, is, if you've seen the movie, it's the story of, sort of drug-addled guys kind of having these beautiful kind of transcendental experiences going to get their drugs, and then, or selling drugs, I think maybe selling his mom's TV. His mom's super addicted to TV. She goes and buys it back. She's sitting in the house watching TV, then she loves her food, and so she's a super addict of like just food and TV, and she's having her hair colored by somebody, and like she wants it to be colored red because she wants to be on TV, and then like the person colors it just totally like orange rather than like a redder thing, and everything is just so sad and so heartbreaking and so splintering. And I remember in the book they did talk about the scene that you see of the never better Marlon Wayans. I mean, like, nobody has ever put in a better performance than in that movie. Marlon Wayans, thinking back to like sitting on his grandmother's lap or something, and here he is, this little black kid sitting on his grandmother's lap, and it's just, it feels a little bit kind of a little bit off, let's say. It feels a little bit manipulative. Emotional manipulation, emotionally manipulative it feels, but nevertheless it is just this beautiful moment of him thinking back to this time in his life when stuff was still a little pure, and here he is surrounded by the utter trash and disgustingness and darkness and people dying in corners and or whatever's happening, and mothers just wasting away in these horrible old apartment buildings, and their sons just ruining their lives and having some connection with this girl that they're basically just sexually using, but it feels like they're reaching for something right and good, and they crumble, and all of that is going on, and he's just thinking back to, here I am, but here was this one time of purity before all that happened.